Welcome to the annual meeting. The first order of business in our meeting is to elect a chairperson who will help facilitate and run the meeting. So if I could get someone in the audience to nominate a chairperson, that would be great. Yes.
I, Reed Foster of 3011 Red Hawk Trail, move to nominate Aaron Bibb to serve as the chairperson of the 2024 Monona Grove School District Annual Meeting and Budget Hearing.
Great. Are there any other nominations for chairperson?
I would second that nomination.
Oh, thank you, Philip. Thank you, Peter. Are there any other nominations?
Can I nominate somebody?
Sure. Is someone who's not you, Aaron? Is that where you're going with that? Okay, well, we can take a vote by a show of hands. All those in favor of Aaron as chairperson, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, ayes have it. Welcome Aaron Bibb as our chairperson. Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce our members of the Board of Education. We have Board President Elizabeth Cook. We have Philip Haven. We have Peter Sobel, Rochelle Miller, Eric Hartz, Susan Manning, and Janice Stone. I'd also like to introduce our Superintendent Tanya Frederick.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
Can you pull the microphone up a little bit so that
How's that?
Yes, that.
Great. And I'd like to introduce our Assistant Superintendent of Business, Operations, and Human Resources. Thank you. Your name's not on the script. I'm so sorry. Oh, thank you. What she said. And our parliamentarian is Attorney Doug Witt of Boardman and Clark. So I'd like to announce that the meetings from the 2023 annual meeting and budget hearing can be found on pages 8 to 9 of the annual meeting booklet. And now it's time for our superintendent's report from Dr. Frederick.
Good evening, and thank you for being here and being the chairperson. So as I reflect on my first 70-ish days superintendent, I've spent a lot of time listening, learning, and engaging with the community. My goal has been to connect with staff members, board members, families, community, and students to gain a more comprehensive understanding of our district's strengths and areas of growth. It's clear that collaboration is crucial for the work that we need to do together to meet the district's goals. I want to acknowledge the work that's been done in the past before my tenure in this community and express my commitment to building on that foundation. And I also want to recognize in the short time that I've been here, we've identified immediate areas of focus, which is strengthening communication, addressing fiscal challenges, and supporting our students and staff. Both can be true. There's a strong foundation of things that have happened in this district that are positive, and there's also some immediate areas that we need to address. As far as enrollment updates going, we're super excited to announce that kids are back. We've had a lot of really big topics that we've talked about lately, but we have to think about what is the reason that we're here, and it's to serve students. So when we think about the enrollment, our unofficial count is 3,694 students that graced our doors last Tuesday. And we are going to be able to have the official count on the third Friday, which is October 20th. So we'll look forward to that. As far as class sizes go, district-wide, we have been able to make sure all of our class sizes are within our set guidelines. We have 2 grade levels that are slightly above the goal. 8 are at or below the goal, and we're looking at individual buildings and sections. You can see that we have 4K through 8 across 5 buildings and 17 grade levels. 11 of those 17 sections are at or below the class size goal. And I'll just remind everybody that in our board policy, we have a range and then we have a goal. And so we are not creeping up on that top of that range at all. So I think that's a celebration as we think about how we meet the needs of kids. Back to school nights have started before the school year started for our 4K through 6th 6th grade students, and we are really excited to say that we had a tremendous amount of engagement in that time. So it was great to see our staff back in the buildings and kids and families coming. It was a huge success with a really strong turnout. We do a survey for families. It won't click forward. Oh, okay. So we have, you can see it in the board docs that are online, but we did do a survey of all the families who came to our back to school nights, and it's a four plus stars for that engagement. And we'll look forward to MG21 and also the high school having their back to school night soon. School nutrition, there it is. When we think about the work that our school nutrition does, you can see that they are working tirelessly to ensure all of our students have access to healthy and nutritious meals. Our participation rates remain strong, and we're committed to maintaining that high service. And what you see here is a year at a glance with the data numbers for your review. Transportation overview, we are up and ready. We do about 40 bus routes each day with Nelson's Bus Company. They cover over 1,800 miles daily to ensure that our students arrive safely to and from school. There are over 60 drivers that are consistently running those 40 bus routes. So we're hopeful that we have a really strong year of bus drivers to keep those routes going and running on time. Stop Finder is the app that families use to track that, and we have 1,600 of our families who are using this tool to really enhance the communication, but also a peace of mind about where the route is in conjunction. As far as staffing updates go, we are pleased to say that all of our classrooms are staffed with our classroom teacher. You might see that we have a couple openings that are still there for long-term subs for leave of absences. We do continue to work to meet the needs of staffing our special education and student services department. And I would say that this is a not just a local trend, but a state trend and also a national trend. So when we really think about work in the future from a sustainability standpoint, being part of that solution at a state level and a local level will be really important as we move forward. Recruiting and retaining quality staff for these roles are a top priority, and to think about how do we take the initiative in filling these roles. Lastly, I'd be remiss to not make a few comments about our current fiscal reality that I've inherited. We know that our financial situation is a top priority at the same time of making sure that every one of the students and staff members that are here and that we serve every day have what they need and are able to continue to work and grow and to learn. So while we're working with our partners to ensure fiscal responsibility, I just want to add a few items. One of the questions that I've been asked as a superintendent about why I haven't recommended a forensic audit. As a district administrator, I've not recommended that at this time because there is no evidence of misconduct or funds being diverted for personal gains. The overages that we've seen in expenditures are related to the critical investments in safety, operation, performance. Poor practices and procedures have led to this lack of having an appropriate fund balance. We're currently collaborating with a variety of people from Baird, an external audit firm, and also a school accounting professional to really assess our fiscal practices. As an administration, we remain vigilant, and if any evidence of misuse arises, we would recommend that to the board. And it's important to note they typically start around $80,000 to do one. We will produce a detailed budget timeline that would be ready by October 30th because we are committed as administration to have a transparency and accurate budget for everyone to see. And community involvement is a value. You'll see that this week the policy committee will be working on establishing a standing finance and operation committee as charged by the full board that will include recommendations for community members and staff members in advisory capacity, as we're committed to having a responsible oversight for this current budget and the budgets for the years to come. So as we move forward, I remain dedicated to fostering collaboration and maintaining transparency as we support our students, our staff, and our communities from the boardroom to the classroom. And together we're going to build on that success and address our challenges. Because at the end of the day, we serve an amazing community, and we serve amazing kids and have amazing staff, and we want to be able to sustain that and really continue to strive to be a district of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we can find the treasurer's report on pages 10 and 11 of the meeting booklet. A complete auditor's report will be presented to the Board of Education after completion of the official audit report by Wipfli LLP CPA, which is expected to be presented in December of 2024. And now, Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations and Human Resources, Kristen Sobaczynski, will present the 2024-25 proposed budget, which is outlined beginning on page 12 in the meeting booklet.
Thank you. Well, I have to apologize to.
I think so. Yes, it's really close.
Gotta get in close. All right. Well, I apologize to those of you that were at the August 22nd meeting and heard my presentation, because you'll hear a lot of the same things this evening. However, I think it's important to start with sort of an overview of the Wisconsin school district budget basics, just to give you some context to the conversation. So really, the revenue limit is something that drives school finance. It's a calculation that's in state statute. It was implemented in 1993, and it's really used as a calculation that takes enrollment and a per pupil amount to determine the amount of revenue you have for operating schools each year. There's really only two ways to generate additional revenue. Either your enrollment goes up or the per pupil amount goes up each year. From a per pupil history perspective, districts have had it pretty tough since about Act 10, 2012 there. We took a sharp decrease in our per pupil amount, and since that time, the per pupil amount has not increased from an inflationary standpoint to where we were prior to Act 10. So many districts that haven't increased in enrollment, we're really not getting that per pupil amount necessary to just fund inflationary expenditures. As a state, you'll see that before Act 10, we were higher than average per pupil in expenditures, and we have slowly dropped off year to year until, as you see now, we're below average. Fortunately for Monona Grove, we've been increasing in enrollment much of the time since Act 10 happened, which has been able for the district to generate additional revenues. However, in the last few years, we've really leveled off. So that per pupil amount in the biennial budget will become really important as we look at future budget years. So how are districts funded? We have that revenue limit calculation that has a big pot of funds. And that pot of funds is split between property taxes and state aid. State aid is not new money. It is property tax relief. So if you ever hear on the news that the state's giving districts more money, it's really important to hear if they say it's in state aid or if it's in the revenue limit calculation. Revenue limit calculation, that per pupil amount gives us more money. State aid gives us property tax relief. So here's the calculation. You take that revenue limit, that big pot of money, subtract out state aid, and that is what our property taxes are. So how is state aid calculated? State aid takes various variables from districts to determine how they're going to distribute aid in an equal basis. It really relies on the property value per student, the cost per student, and enrollment. And so districts that have a lower property value per student receive more aid, and those that have a higher property value per student receive less aid. The state average property value is a $977,000 in comparison. Monona Groves is $951,000. So we're slightly below state average, which would mean we'd receive more aid than average. And in fact, it's increasing from last year to this year, where our costs are covered from state aid 43% versus 40% last year. And this graph here sort of depicts that inverse relationship, whereas the property value per student goes down, our state aid increases. And this is our history almost doubling since 2015. A little bit about a school budget timeline. It's typically a year-long process. Obviously, haven't been here the full year, but it usually starts in November, where you get your enrollment forecast. That's a really important part of the revenue limit and generating revenue for the district. And then you look at your forecast, typically in December. It gives you your playing field, how you're going to develop the budget over the next several months. And then you have your preliminary budget that's typically approved in June. Start of the fiscal year is July 1st. And then we're here at the annual meeting, which is typically the preliminary budget, just a statutory requirement to have an annual meeting. And then in October, we have our adjusted budget and levy certification. So why is the budget not approved before the fiscal year? That is because we don't have all the information we need. We need the third Friday count for our revenue limit calculation. We need our state aid certification to determine our property taxes, and we need our equalized value to determine our mill rate. That information is all received by the end of October, which is why we bring forth the adjusted budget at that time. So this is a revised budget from the June budget, and some of the revisions that are included in this are salary and benefits of individuals in the places at the time of the budget. We did remove some one-time expenditures that we could see, and we added some expenditures that were not budgeted for. When we had talked in previous meetings, we talked about how we got into the financial situation we're in. One of those issues was that things that were annual expenditures every year just weren't budgeted for. I can't see my slides, so it's really hard. Included.
On this laptop as well.
Oh, thank you. Included in the revised preliminary budget is the $1.6 million that is in the recurring referendum that the voters passed on last year. We do have the $325 per pupil that is in the biennial budget. This is the second year of the biennial budget. We have a per pupil categorical aid increase of $742. We're projecting 50 additional students, thank you, and proposing a total tax levy of that should be $33,155,219. That is a decrease from the 23-24 year. The district does have 9 funds. The 2 largest funds are Fund 10, which is our general fund operations, and Fund 27, which is our special education fund. Fund 10 revenues have been really consistent with what has been budgeted. So you'll see we have the 23-24 budget to actual there. The budget was $55.1 million. They received $56.8 million in revenue, and there will be a slight increase in the 24-25 budget. Revenue sources, I talked about state aid being about 43% of our revenues. It's 46% on this slide because this slide also includes some other categorical aid. So 43% general aid, and then we have some other categorical aid, and our property taxes are about 43%. Other district revenue is the next largest amount. That's really from open enrollment, so open enrollment students coming into our district. From an expenditure standpoint, here again I have the 23-24 budget to actual. Those highlighted areas are the areas of the budget that were overspent from what was budgeted, and you can see the largest area being purchase services. Purchase services are things like if we hire a contractor to do our roof, if we hire a contractor to do our pavement, if we pay tuition to another district to educate our students. This area, about $1 million of that was not budgeted for open enrollment students. So that was one of those areas where it's a typical annual expense, and just for some reason, we didn't have a budget number in there. And then the other largest area is in the transfers. That is funds those are funds that are transferred to Fund 27 to make sure that budget is balanced. And the reason that was higher than budgeted is mainly due to salary and benefits and tuition. From an expenditure standpoint, this is a gross expenditure, so it still has a transfer to Fund 27 in it. Salary and benefits make up about 66% of our Fund 10 budget, and you'll see that transfer amount is about 12%. That goes to Fund 27 to cover expenditures in that fund. When you look at salary and benefits from both Fund 10 and 27, and you remove that fund transfer, you'll see that the percent salary and benefit is closer to 75-77%. Special education funding, you'll see the revenues at the top on the breakdown between the Fund 10 transfer, state aid, and federal aid, and the expenditures below by function. That's the state required approved budget format. From a overall percentage of revenues, you'll see Fund 10 makes up almost 67% of special education revenues, with state aid following. Fund 21 is our gift fund or donation fund. This would be if someone would donate funds to the district, or it can also include sports or clubs that fundraise for themselves. We don't typically budget for that because that's not something we generate, but outside groups do, and you'll see it's about $600,000 per year in revenues and expenditures. Fund 38 and 39 are our debt service funds. Fund 38 is our non-referendum debt service, and Fund 39 is our referendum debt service. Those are based on our debt schedule, so we levy for those amounts and we pay those amounts. The amount you see in fund balance aren't actually additional funds sitting there. We levy in the fall for calendar payments, so it's for our fall payments is that fund balance amount in there. Capital Projects Fund is for capital projects for which we borrowed funds for. This includes some of our solar projects that we did. We have about $2 million left in that fund balance and plan to utilize that on the projects that it was approved for in this upcoming year. Fund 50 is our food service fund. We are fortunate enough in this district to have a self-sustaining food service fund, which means that the program generates revenues to offset the expenditures in the Fund 50 account. You can see our fund balance is about $863,000 that we hold in fund balance in order to replace different equipment that may need either servicing or replacement over the next several years. But from year to year, we are typically balanced in terms of our revenue and expenditures. Fund 80 is our community service fund. This fund includes our rep care program. It includes our aquatic center and our auditorium. There was a large investment in our auditorium last year for sound, which is why you see the expenditures exceeded revenues in that year, and it brought our fund balance down a little bit. And Fund 99 is our Dane County School Consortium, and it's a series of districts that work together, and it's a balanced budget from year to year. We're the fiscal agent for that program. What this all leads to is a total net budget of $76.6 million, or a decrease of 2.87%. This also leads to our total school levy of $33.1 million. It's a decrease of 1.13%. And we have it broken down here between the different areas. So the general fund is $25.3 million. We have our referendum debt service fund of 5.1, our non-referendum of 1.9, and our community service fund of 750,000. Our mill rate history over the years, we have decreased almost $4 over the past 12 years. And our 24-25 adjusted budget we'll bring to you in October, so we're not done yet. This is the preliminary budget that we've reviewed today. What will that budget include? It will include some positions that were open positions that we won't fill because of either enrollment that didn't occur. So we tracked enrollment and we didn't see a need for a classroom teacher or other positions that we felt we could distribute the duties throughout. We're going to remove non-mission critical items and account for any salary and benefit changes since July, and then we'll have those 3 items that we don't have until October in that adjusted budget. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you very much. And now it's time to consider the tax levy for the year. We have a suggested motion, so we'll have a motion from the floor, and then any debate on that motion. Do we have a motion?
I, Lydia Bertram, of 504 School Road, Move approval of a 2024-2025 tax levy in the total amount of $33,155,219.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Second. I second.
And could you give your name and address?
I, Katie Morrill of 319 Southern Grange, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin. Second, the approval of the 2024-25 tax levy in the total amount of $33,155,219.
Thank you very much. And do we have any discussion on the motion? Three, two, one. Okay. Well, we'll vote by a show of hands. All in favor of the motion, please indicate so by raising your hand. All opposed, please indicate so by raising your hand. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And then our next item of business is the annual salaries for school board members. As a point of information, the annual salaries for the school board members for the previous year was $4,000. Do we have a motion on this issue?
I, Lydia Bertram, of 504 School Road, move to set the 2024-2025 annual salaries of school board members at $4,120, at a raise of 3% in keeping with inflation.
And do we have a second for the motion? And you don't need to repeat the full motion. Just state your name and address and say, I second the motion.
I, Katie Morrill of 319 Southern Grange. Second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and thank you. And I want to let the community know that the extent to which you want to authorize that, obviously, that's your ability to do so. But also, I will speak for myself, not for the entire board here. But certainly, if the community wanted to set our salaries at zero, we would be understanding and open to that.
Further discussion?
Mine's Mike Swanson. I'm from 2563 Bass Road, Cottage Grove. And I think the offer to put the salaries at $0 this year, given the financial situation we're in, is a great one. And can I motion to amend, or?
I think we discussed the motion. It can be withdrawn at any time. We could have a motion to amend, but I think procedurally, if the discussion can see where the room goes, and I think
Okay.
that would be my suggestion.
To amend, and I appreciate that. I think that's appropriate in this situation.
Do I need to state my name and address again?
I think for the
Okay.
Oh,
record.
504 School Road. I would like to see salaries stay in place as we're looking at the school board probably having to go through some training and put in extra hours. Understandably, there have been mistakes made, and that's why we're in where we are. However, especially as we're looking at attracting new talent to the school board, I think that it's a dangerous move to completely take this salary away, which is already very, very small for the amount of hours you've put in, to say, when we're looking at getting new talent.
Rex Lake 406 Hoyle Parkway in Cottage Grove. I would like to second the amended authorization for salaries for school board members.
So to be clear, we don't, I think, have an official amendment, motion to amend on the floor. We could do that if we wanted, if somebody wanted to. My suggestion was maybe that we just discuss the motion, the pros and cons of the 41 whatever.
Well, I agree with this gentleman
Or
that zero
yeah.
would be more appropriate under the circumstances.
And then we can have an up or down vote on this motion, and then I think
Hi, Eric Hartz, board member. I thought about, I understand the public's concern and the salary for zero. It's actually something I brought up early, talking with other board members. And then I thought about it, and, you know, that it concerns me because of the time that I'll speak for myself, that I put into the board and invest in doing everything that we're supposed to do. We made a mistake, I made a mistake, an oversight mistake. It wasn't a purposeful mistake. So I understand how the public could say zero, but at the same time, I would be concerned if, I think that should be a decision that board members should make by themselves. I think board members can make a decision themselves to not accept that salary. I think that's how that should be. Of course, it's not my decision to make, it's the public's decision to make to determine that, but that's how I feel about it. I think it's somewhat concerning if you have board members that are serving, and it's a small amount, yes, but then they're serving for zero, and I would wonder if that might affect some of the time committed that some of the board members would get. I don't know if it would or not. So.
I really appreciate both of you and your thoughts. I've struggled with what was always termed as salary since I've been on the board. It's very, very helpful to have our expenses for our Wisconsin School Board Association meetings, because those are really important for board members to participate in and learn from. But the salary I've always struggled with. And so personally, I'd be more comfortable with expenses, but not with the salary.
I'd like to make an additional comment. My understanding is that the issue with our finances right now has been noted since 2021 audits, and it was listed as a material deficiency, and nothing was done about it. And I'm going to assume that every board member has reviewed the audited financial statements for the prior years. You missed it. Auditors shouldn't have been fired. You guys should have been fired.
We didn't get
Oh, hold on. Let's keep the order of speaking. Do we have other comments? Yes, go ahead.
I completely agree with you that things were missed. I completely agree that.
I'm sorry, could you state your name again?
Oh, sorry, Lydia Bertram, out of Forest School Road. I completely agree that things were missed and that some of them were very obvious oversights, things that were overlooked. But looking at the future of the school board and moving forward, I think that, again, some of us would like to see some new people on the school board, and in order for that to happen, I think that at least some salary or incentive needs to be there to make up for the many, many hours that we hope will be put in by school board members and in reviewing documents ahead of time on meetings and attending meetings and making sure they're informed on the issues and fully trained to be school board members.
Hello, Mike Swanson again. So I want to clarify, I think, why I agree with what Ms. Cook said. I think I understand that the school board is expected to put in a lot of time, and I appreciate that. I think kind of even with regard to what we've already said tonight, a lot of people, or potentially other parts of the district, are going to be expected to make sacrifices or find other ways to do more with less, as you might say. And I think as a token, at least in the very, at the case of this year, potentially alone, I don't have a problem with it being discussed and going back to next year. But I think given the acute nature of the problem right now, that it would be an appropriate token for the school board to make of it. I think ends up being about $28,000 a year, which admittedly isn't going to solve the problem, but I think it's a show of good faith on your part that you're putting your skin in the game as well.
Did you have a comment? Yeah.
Jack Langmaker, 5504 Healy Lane, Monona. First question I've got is I believe you do not receive a salary. Under Internal Revenue rules, salaries are subject to withholding and taxes. I don't know if you do that. I don't believe you do. The proper terminology, I believe, is a stipend. I joined the school board for the first time here in 1994. And at that time, the stipend was $1,000. I can't even remember exactly what the issue was, but the board immediately got their salaries slashed by 50% on the $500 you would stay there for a few years. If you're in this for the money, you're in this for the wrong thing. You should be here for the benefit of the district. I don't think that going down to zero is exactly the number, but it's certainly less than probably $2,000 or that in that neighborhood. You only meet once a month. It's an easy schedule. I know there's a lot of other things that go on in your spare time that is not subject to public meetings, a lot of committee work and that sort of thing. But I think that given the situation that you're in, something less than half of what you're currently getting is appropriate.
Hi, John. Peter Sobel, 6005 Midwood. I just wanted to comment procedurally. First of all, the board doesn't set their salaries. This group does, and although the members of the board are residents of the district and they can vote here, typically, historically, we abstain from the vote on setting salaries. The other thing I just wanted to point out that if no motion passes, then the stipends is the correct word, stay where they are from last year. If we want to change that number, then so if this current motion fails, then the salaries stay where they are. If we want to change the number, we need to pass a motion with a different number. In which case, you can amend the motion. The motion on the floor is $4,100. You can amend the motion to a different number specifically.
We've got a couple comments over here.
Susan Manning, 1108 Neshusha Trail Northeast. I appreciate Peter's clarification of, in fact, the board is not allowed by policy or statute to actually vote on the motion. So you would see them, for increasing the salary, you would see them abstain. They would not be voting no, they're abstaining on the statutory criteria of conflict of interest. So any of those amounts were authorized by community non-board members. I just want to add that clarity. The other thing I want to ask each and every one of you in here to go watch the June 12th board meeting at approximately 1 hour, 6 minutes, and watch for 4 minutes. And you will see how this happened when you ask that question. You will see board member Peter Sobel say very clearly what is the fund balance. The answer on television in front of all of you being telecast was 15%. That was June 12th of this year. The second question that was asked by a board member is, how do you foresee your budget transitioning to the new superintendent and the new, at that time, director of business services or associate superintendent, assistant superintendent? The answer to that question was, well, it will be fine. So I think it's important for you to understand the stonewall in in terms of the information that the board needed to make the right decisions. And that's one reason we are here to fight for you right now. And again, whatever this community is comfortable doing with this salary, you should do. Control that. For me, I'm comfortable without it because I want to make that contribution toward our debt. But we had a board member who couldn't have made the meetings without a babysitter, and she needed that amount of money to pay her sitter to be at the board meetings. So there are other things that you weigh as you consider these issues. Thank you very much.
And then could you pass it to your right? Thank you.
Hi, Janice Stone, 3731 Crestview Drive in Cottage Grove. I would just like to say two things. First of all, I've been at so many more board meetings than I thought I was going to be when I first got on the board. There have been a lot of board meetings, and that includes committee meetings. I'm also, no matter what we set the stipend at, I will be refusing it this year.
Do we have any other comments? Okay. Could you give me the exact number for the motion again? Thank you.
$4,120.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor is to set the salaries or the stipends at $4,120. If you would like to vote in favor of the motion, please show by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3. If you'd like to vote against the, 4. So wait, in favor of the motion, let's do that one more time because I saw some hands popping. Okay. I count. Oh, you were saying 3. Thank you. I thought you were raising your hand. Okay. Opposed to the motion, please show by raising your hand. I see 4. And would anyone like to abstain from the motion? Many abstentions. The motion fails. So at this point, we would entertain a new motion. We would ask that you use this format. Would anyone like to make a new motion?
I, Mike Swanson of 2563 Bass Road, move to set the 2024-25 annual salaries of school board members at 0.
Do we have a second for the motion?
Rex Link, 406 Coyle Parkway, Cottage Grove. I move to set the 2024-25 annual salary for school board members at 0.
We'll take that as a second to the motion. Is there any discussion on this motion that was not had during the discussion of the first motion? Okay. So we have a motion to set salaries at 0. All in favor, please raise your hands. I count 2. All opposed, please raise your hands. I count 3. All abstaining, please raise your hands. Quite a few. The motion fails. I would entertain a third motion to set the salaries or stipends or both.
Thank you. Dennis Hanson, I live at 609 Queens Way, Monona. Actually a resident of the school district for 49 years. And my sense is that
Excuse me, did you have a motion to make?
I'm going to make
I'm sorry, I have to be a stickler here. We need a motion on the floor before we start discussion. Thank you.
Okay. My motion is $2,000 instead of 4.
Could you do me a favor and fill in the blanks?
Dennis Hanson, 609 Queens Way, thank you. Monona moved to set the 24-25 annual salaries of school board members at $2,000.
And we'll get to your comments, but we'll need a second first. So do we have a second for the motion?
John Weinberger, 5504 Healing, Monona. I propose a second motion.
Thank you. And now, I'm so sorry to keep cutting you off. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, I was just saying that I've been tracking this dilemma, and to be honest with you, however it happened, I'm really shocked that a deficit of this nature would go unanswered for 3 consecutive years. I think I should point out that I myself dealt with a board in my previous employment. I was a bureau director in the Wisconsin Department of Justice for 20 years. I did work for a board. And for that board, I very much endeavored to provide accurate information about the dealings of the board, its financial concerns. And if I would have done what occurred for 3 years in the district, I would have lost my job. And so I'm thinking that somehow there has to be some statement of concern toward the school board about the responsibility for what has happened. Even to the point of simply not perhaps buying at face value what someone is saying over a 3-year period for a budget dilemma, forcefully asking questions that need to be answered. And that is why I'm thinking there has to be some statement here about what has happened for the school.
Any further discussion on the motion? All right. So the motion on the floor is to set stipends at $2,000. All in favor, please raise your hands. I see 4. All opposed, please raise your hands. I see 1. All abstaining, please raise your hands. Again, very many. The motion carries. Salaries are set, or stipends, at $2,000 per year. The next item of business is to authorize the reimbursement of those expenditures that Susan Manning mentioned earlier, the expenses by the school board members. We have a proposed motion for this issue as well. Do we have a motion?
I, Lydia Bertram, 504 School Road, move to authorize the reimbursement of school board members for expenses incurred in the performance of duties.
And do we have a second for the motion? We do.
I, Katie Morrow of 319 Southing Grange, Cottage Grove, second motion.
All right. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
John Weinberger, 5504, Katie Lane, Monona. An explanation is in order for what expenses are covered.
Thank you. Could anyone speak to that issue?
For almost entirely the expenses, in fact, I don't think there's anything else, but the expenses are for the attendance of the WASB, the annual school board convention that occurs every winter on the coldest weekend of the year in Milwaukee at the end of January. So it's the expenses associated with that. Occasionally there are other meetings which may or may not have special interest, but almost always it's just the annual meeting in Milwaukee.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Over there.
Hi, Elizabeth Cook, 2147 Liberty Drive, Cottage Grove. Similar to the last one, I feel similar about this one, specifically the WASB conference, which is a great conference. There's a lot of learning that happens there. But our staff have been asked not to travel this year, and to me, it feels reasonable that our board also would not travel this year. And if that's the expense that's incurred, then I don't think it's necessary for reimbursement.
Philip Haven, 505 McKenna Road. I would just like to add my agreement to what Elizabeth just said. This is one of the items on my list, along with, as board member Stone also mentioned, rejecting board salary and also any optional expenditures. I think this is valuable, but it's truly a nice to have in a year like this. And so I agree that I don't see any reason why this is critical.
John Weinberger, 5504 Lane, downtown Monona. There are other things that I think the board should consider not discarding, and that is WSB provides a lot of workshops and other informative programs that are very beneficial to board members. It also gives you an opportunity to interact with other school board members from around the state. And I think you should keep those up if at all possible.
We're all going to know where everyone lives by the end of this meeting, so that's nice. Who's hosting the party?
Eric Hartz, 5509 Grant Place. I would agree with the other board members who said that I don't find this necessary for this year to attend the WASB conference. We're going to ask staff to do the same thing. I think it's only fair for the board members, and we'll be fine. I'll speak for myself. I'll be fine.
Any for? Oh, yes, we have one more or two more.
Carrie Bradley, 611 Clear Spring Court. It's my understanding that as members of the WASB, you have a delegate that votes on the WASB agenda, and that meeting takes place at the meeting that you're discussing. So you might want to consider perhaps choosing not to go yourself, but not putting 0 in here so that you could reimburse the person who does attend to represent our district's interests with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. And as previously mentioned, there's workshops and other activities that you can participate in, and I would certainly encourage you to take advantage of those. The meeting that you go to sometimes is so overwhelming with all the choices, but I do believe that they have targeted training opportunities and workshops as was described. So thank you.
And we had a comment here.
I guess mine was more a question. So if you aren't going to the conference, what other avenues, or do you have a different avenue for financial training? Or I guess I'm wondering what would you do it as an alternative?
We had Elizabeth first, I think, but.
Elizabeth Cook, 2147 Liberty Drive, Cottage Grove. So we all have membership with the WASB, and the majority of WASB events, both live trainings and recorded trainings, modules, those kinds of things are available online. And so we still have the ability to access all of those pieces. I think what we're talking about specifically here, they have the conference in January, the annual convention that Peter referenced. They also do an in-person event in the spring, something I attended to a couple of years ago because it was specific around school safety and mental health, which is an area of interest and expertise of mine. But again, like, nice to have, it's not needs to have, but not going to that does not take away our ability to access all of the programming around WASB. But yeah, appreciate the question though, it's an important one.
I just wanted to respect.
Oh, thank you.
I am the delegate this year for the WSB, and I'm happy to go without reimbursement. You don't have to be a full conference attendee to go as a delegate, so I'm happy to still do that and take care of that.
Eric, did you still want to speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
To answer your question, Ms. I don't,
Sorry, Lydia.
Lydia, yes, Lydia. So with the last conference, the WASB I attended, I specifically went to the financial, which explained the situations that we were going to be in. And I even presented it to the board at that time. And just so you're aware, the reason we're in this is not because we didn't understand the financial situation of the district. It's because there were oversights that we weren't made aware of. We weren't diligent. I'll speak for myself. Wasn't diligent enough to pinpoint and find by asking questions and double checking things. So I don't feel like information I'm going to be getting on the finances would be relevant to the situation that happened here. Of course, I think it's important, but for For this situation, it's a little different. So, and it's very frustrating for me that I spent the time to specifically figure out where we were with all the ESSER funding and COVID to see where our financial status was. I asked a lot of questions about it, but it wasn't related to how we got into this situation specifically. So,
Do we have any further questions or comments?
Again, I think
And could you reintroduce yourself again?
Susan Manning, 1108 Decision Trail, Northeast Monona. I think it's important to encourage board members to take the opportunity to go to the WSB meetings. The training is really critical in learning how to be how to understand the law and the regulations relating to what we do. Otherwise, you may not know that, and you may put yourself and or the board in jeopardy. They provide that information. They do provide a lot of virtual, but when you go to the actual meeting in Milwaukee, they do a full half day on finance, which I've been to year after year. And as another board member mentioned, knowing that information and getting it from administration were two entirely different things in the occurrence of this event. The other piece it helps you to do is what are other school boards doing in the state of Wisconsin about particular issues that we need to work on. Class sizes, teacher training, Title IX. There's a list of things, and you actually have presentations from other board members who are experiencing similar things. And in fact, I would challenge us, except I think it's too late to submit it at this time, I would challenge us to present this occurrence to WSB at one of the meetings. And I think the right thing to do is to authorize the expenses, and then a board member can not submit them as they choose at a time like this. But the authorization is there, and it encourages the board member to go.
Any other comments? Okay. We have a motion on the floor to reimburse the board members for these expenses. If you are in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're opposed to the motion, please raise your hand. I count 5 to 3. And if you're abstaining, please raise your hand. Of course. The motion carries. Thank you. Then we need a motion to authorize the school board to establish the 2025 annual meeting details. A proposed motion is now on the screen. Do we have a motion? If you want to do this again next year, somebody's got to make this motion. So we're going to mix it up.
I, Katie Morrow of 319 Southern Grange, Cottage Grove, move to authorize the school board to establish the date and time and place of the 2025 annual meeting and budget hearing.
Do we have a second?
Leah Bertram of 504 School Road, Cottage Grove, second motion.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed, please raise your hands. All abstaining, please raise your hands. Motion carries. Thank you. Any other business? We are limited statutorily into what we can take up at this meeting, so. Okay, seeing no business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I, Katie Morrow of 319 Southern Grange, Cottage Grove, move that the meeting be adjourned.
I, Lydia Bertram of 504 School Road, second the motion.
All right, I'm expecting extensive discussion on the motion. All right, all in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed, please raise your hands. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
Sure.